Now I am. Thank
There it
you.
is. I
I
got
was
it.
writing down that Ed Gillum has joined us. Hi, Ed.
I see. Hi, Ed. Okay, first order of business is public comment. Seeing no public in attendance. Next item, approval of minutes from our January 18th meeting. Any errors, omissions, corrections?
Move to
Seeing none,
accept.
I'd entertain a motion to approve those minutes from the 18th.
I move.
Motion from Bill, second from Rick. Okay. All in favor, we'll do it by roll call. Lee,
Aye.
Rob,
Aye.
Rick,
Aye.
Ed,
Aye.
Bill,
Aye.
and chair votes aye. Okay, those minutes are approved. I see Ken Bogrand isn't on for an update as to what's going on. So we'll skip over that item. We'll see if Ken tunes in. When I checked with him recently, he had no new information, although there are a lot of different projects, the road projects and so on. The fact that Steve Arsenault has been officially designated as a DPW chair, or not chair, director. I know he's got his hands full with a bunch of projects. That leads into the next item. The board has hired a transportation planner to replace Mike Burns. I have no further information about him other than what I read on the Current or one of those things. So does anyone have any information about the new the transportation planner? Yes, Lee?
I was talking with Nat Lowell offline, and I'm sorry he's not here because he could tell us more because of his connection to NPEDC and the planning board. He obviously knew a little bit more than most of us. The planner is somebody who interviewed before, re-interviewed this time because it was acceptable to the town, pardon me, that he live off island, work remotely, and visit as often as needed. And so I'll get his name in a minute. Patrick, is that right?
Reed. Yeah, Patrick Reed.
Yeah, Patrick Reed. I think it behooves us to work with him to visit the committee and to have an agenda of committee issues that we hope he would tell us his views on. We've talked about roundabouts, rotaries. I still insist that it has to do with where you live as to what you call these damn things. In New Jersey, they were traffic circles.
All right. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's a great idea as far as getting him in here. I did speak with Andrew Force one last week sometime, and okay. So anyway, I'll work on that to introduce myself to the new planning director and invite him to our next meeting. And it's a good idea to get some agenda items, the things that we're waiting on. So,
well, I mean, Alan, there's some obvious ones, and I'm going to make a note or two. But our memorandum on sidewalks, on streets without sidewalks, our thoughts on roundabouts, those are two critical ones. And then if people can think of anything else that, for example, I put this lower down the list only because I know that Steve Arsenault is working on sidewalks.
Mhm.
So the sidewalk campaign, but we should get Reed's thoughts on those. Let me make a note or two on, it's called sidewalk memo, Rotaries, sidewalk reconstruction. And if anybody thinks of anything else when I send around the draft minutes, shoot them back to me.
Okay. Yeah, Bill?
On the sidewalk, one thing that comes to mind, the section down past Rabimbus is just before Williams Lane, Williams Street, where the Lentowski family's taking those trees down and they're doing a little park and restoration in there.
Mhm.
It'd be interesting, now that they've started that project, to see how that accelerates or enhances or enables the town's plans to work with them. Because there was talk about whether they did it through easements or however they were going to do it, but they were very, as I understand it, amenable to helping get a sidewalk down through that stretch. And so they're talking about, over the next year or so, doing whatever they need to do in there. So it would be good, I think, that we bring that up to get up to speed on it.
Yes. I am quite familiar with that project. I met with Rob McNeil and Andrew Vorse about, I think it was a year or so ago, on the site. And as you say, the property owner is amenable to putting a sidewalk in. And with this garden that they're going to be creating, I know that that they've been in touch with the town as far as that project, and I'm assuming it's a good point as far as speeding up the town's ability to take that project on and get it completed. But I'll definitely follow the progress of that project, because it's an area that we're all quite interested in.
Alan, before you get going,
Yes.
I'm doing three things at once, but I just sent Ken Bogran the link to the Zoom again. I'll let you know as soon as he signs on.
Okay, great, good. Okay, that brings us to chapter 91. I did send the draft that Rick had prepared and we had discussed for 2 meetings, whatever. And I sent out the final copy that I sent to the select board. I sent it to Libby, the select board, and to Erica. And
Hello.
I heard back from.
Yes. I have just sent it to you. Look at your email.
Okay.
All right. Okay, thanks.
Great, thanks, Lee. So I did hear back from Libby saying that she had received the communication that we sent, and that it would, it would be discussed at some point with the select board. So again, I'll keep abreast of what's going on with that.
Alan, I was doing two things at once. Ken is online. I'm just taking a note that you discussed Rick Atherton's proposed letter with the town manager, and she will bring it up with select board at the appropriate time.
I sent a copy to Jason at the select board, to Libby and to Erica. I figured that if all three of them had that you know, someone would be able to respond to it. And I did, as I said, I did get a response from Libby saying that she had received it and passed it on to the select board. So,
Can I make a comment with respect to the issue that you're raising with respect to that?
yes, go ahead, Ken. Welcome, by the way.
Yeah, and I apologize. I just got off the Zoom on Baxter Road, and then
Yeah.
I couldn't use what you had sent around to get in. So thanks, Lee. There's one important point that you have not covered in the issues that are represented by the change of the one word to recreation as to the Chapter 91 thing, and that is the issue of damages. You have a situation where you have most of the properties that are abutting the ocean are held, the title is held by certificate of title as opposed to a recorded deed, but in either event, there's a clear statement in in those certificate to title that the ownership of the property goes all the way to the edge of the water. And so to the extent that this ends up taking away or giving access to the public over a private right that has not been a public right before, there is a very, very real issue relative to the level of consideration that needs to be paid in order to get that right, and who then, in fact, is going to provide the source of the funding in order to be able to come up with the compensation necessary for a private right that was taken away and given to the public. So it's just a very, very important point, which has not been covered in any of the dialogue that I've seen with respect to the work from Dylan and Sear, but it is something that is really significant and to be addressed as a concern moving forward, because in fact the deeds, so we've done a fair amount of research on this with respect to the beach access that I'm working on with the select board. The deeds are very clear that the individual properties, as represented in their certificate of title, they own to the water, and then the only access to it is the three words that we know from the case law. So just wanted to make that point, that it is an issue that isn't addressed in your letter, but is something that I think is something that needs to be remembered as a major concern moving down the road.
Right. I'll get Lee, just hang on just a second.
Sure.
In the cover that I sent with the document, I mentioned that we are well aware of the fact that there are legal, I forget how I phrased it, but legal and political issues that need to be resolved before this can go forward. But the intent of our support was to the concept of having our legislators work on something to provide access to the intertidal zone. So, so we are aware of that. In fact, Ken, when you, I think you brought it up 2 months, probably 2 months ago when we discussed it.
Right.
Lee?
Ken puts his finger explicitly on something that is historically very relevant.
Right.
When I taught mining in the environment, when I taught my students about how to proceed with impact remedies and so forth, I said, you need to know that the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution of the United States protects owners from taking without due process of law. The wording is close. It is inappropriate to take property without due process of law. And so, of course, every piece of property would then require its due process of law, unless somehow the general court figured out a blanket that covered all waterfront property. So I think Ken's put his finger on something that could be lengthy in its adjudication.
Well, exactly, and that's why what what we are concerned about, our committee is concerned about, is the public access part of it over the intertidal water land.
Right.
And so we'll leave it to our representatives at the state level to figure out how to bridge that gap. But I'm sure they've heard an earful or two about the issues that are raised there.
Mhm.
But let's hope that they can find some sort of a way forward with that. Good. Ken, do you have any new information about the transportation planner? And
I have not, the only information I have about the transportation planner is that he's going to be living in Boston and commuting and working. That's all that I have at this particular point in time. So.
Okay. Do you have any update on any of the projects, the sidewalk projects, the takings, any road projects?
Well, what I do have is the items that we talked about at the last meeting and which are in the warrant. I got agreement last night at FinCom for FinCom to make a positive recommendation with respect to all of the select board sponsored articles and all of the citizen sponsored articles as they appear in the warrant.
Oh, interesting. Good. Okay. Anyone else have a question?
I do.
Yes, Lee.
I'm scribbling. Ken, when you say all the issues in the warrant,
The real estate issues in the warrant articles 19, 76, and then from 85 through to 105, all received a positive recommendation from the FinCom at their meeting last night.
most helpful. Thank you, Ken.
All right, excellent. Good. I'll have to go back through my warrant and see what they've approved.
Well, we talked about, I think I outlined, I think I caught every single one of them in the minute that are in the minutes, but they're straightforward because they're in sequential order other than the first two.
Excellent. Great. Good. Anyone else have a question for Ken? No? Ken, do you have anything else for us? Or?
No, I'm going to sit and make sure that I listen to everything's going on because you scared the living daylights out of me when I missed it last time.
Oh no! Gee, we didn't mean to do that. You mean with the Chapter 91?
With the Chapter 91 stuff.
We must have assigned work to Ken that he didn't know about.
Right. Yeah. Well, we did raise the objection or the question that you raised when we discussed it last month.
No, fair comment. I wasn't being critical. I was just being joking.
Yeah, no, I don't.
The rest of your agenda looked like it might be interesting tonight as well. And it's for the first time I don't have other meeting that starts at 4 o'clock as well to go to 6.
Oh, great. Okay. All right. So that brings us then to the next item, the map project. And when I think of the map project, I'm thinking of three things. I'm thinking of the public access, the locations, the locations that we have been discussing for the last couple of months, and the project that Phil has been working on with our GIS person.
Nathan Porter.
Nathan.
Thank you. Boy, I don't know what it is lately. Names and numbers don't seem to be clicking quite as quickly. So anyway, what I've done in the meantime since our last meeting, I've been trying to get a list of the public access points. And I spoke with Andrew Vorse. He said that there is no official list of the public access points that have been, have been designated, the takings and so on. I subsequently spoke with Eleanor Antoinetti, who handled most of that work while she was at the planning department. And I asked her if there was any such thing as a list of easements, a list of any other public access points throughout the island. And she said that there was not a list that she was aware of. So I asked her where those records are. And she said that they would be, and that she identified several different places where they might be. She herself did have, she has quite a recollection of where those takings are and so on. So I had a conversation earlier today with Rick, and we were talking about this item and about public access and easements to the beach. And it occurred to me that the one big beach easements, and there are a number of those, Surfside, in Dionys, and other places around the island. I didn't think to ask if there was any sort of a list of the one big beach easements. Maybe I should have been more specific. So it seems as though these lists ought to be around somewhere, or that there ought to be a record somewhere of where these points are. Yes, Lee?
I think whoever is serving as beach manager in natural resources ought to be able to give you the list of the access points for emergencies. Now, not all of those access points are public, but it certainly would provide the bones of making a list.
Exactly. Yeah. And that I'm seeing that as a starting point. And the first thing I want to do is take a look at that list, see which of those on the list would have either they wouldn't be providing public access because they're on private property. So we'd have to separate out, of course, the land bank and the Conservation Foundation and any other ones that are held by a nonprofit. So, Lee, to your point, that is sort of the starting point, because we do have those 52 access points around the island. And I'm sure that there's going to be a map of those. So between and along with those, the lists that we have from Nathan Porter, remember, we have a list of, how can I put this? We have a list of access points that may or may not be included on that other list. So I think the next step, let's put it that way, is to find out if there is a list of the one big beach easements, and then match that with the access points, see where they overlap, and see if there are other points that we need to recognize. Does that make sense, what I just said?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, let me see what I want to do here. So unfortunately, Phil can't be here with us. He's on his way back to the island from New York today. So I have been able to check with him to see see if he had any new information there. So my plan then going forward is to see, well, first to get a copy of the beach access list, those 52 beach access points, and using that as sort of a base level to see where the one big beach easements are, because I'm assuming that those one big beach easements went along with a public access. Or at least I'm assuming that's the case. Probably in most of the cases that would be. So once we have that information, then using that as the base to add in then any of the roads, any of the other points that Nathan would have that we could add to the map or to, to readjust that. Yes, Rick?
Alan, back to the one big beach, and maybe Ken's read some of these. My recollection is, for example, on the North Shore, when you go out Eel Point Road, I don't think they have access going with them, over those lots or on the edge of the lots. I think the assumption was people would get to the beach from an existing access, but have a right to go along the coastline.
Exactly.
A little bit different, but some do. I'm just pointing out, I don't think it was standard. For example, one big beaches that came with the Baxter Road project, each one runs on the lot, but I don't recall there's any access related to those lot by lot. Okay.
No, that's a good point. There are stairs, by the way, off of particularly off the footpath at Sconset. And back when Deanne did the oversaw the project out there, she went to the Concom to see where which of those stairs down to the beach had a license. And I think, as I recall from that, there were 2 or maybe 3 of the, I don't know how many beach stairs there are, that did have a license. The only one that was marked was the one by Amos Hostetter's at 55 Baxter Road. And he used to, there was a sign on his gate said, "Welcome." So I assume that was, yes, Ali?
I'm going to pose this as a question to Rick, and but it may be a general comment. We are permitted to drive down the 40th pole way, and it's my understanding that from the end of that way, drivers may extend along the beach. Is that what you're referring to, Rick, as a one big beach easement that doesn't necessarily have access from every piece of property along that easement?
Well, I expect 40th pole has been around long before one big beach easements made a lot of progress. And I think in 40th pole, if you're talking about the property, I think it's to the west, where the town has agreed with that property owner, help me here a little bit, somebody, to acquire a license from him to use that as long as we behave ourselves. If that's what you're referring to, that's not a one big beach easement situation.
Yeah, that's that's correct. The owner beyond 40th pole, that is private property down there, and as Rick said, as long as they behave themselves, if they don't behave themselves, the land bank hears about it because the land bank owns 40th pole. I think Rick was referring to further east or north, whatever direction that is, around East Tristram, what do they call it? East Tristram, something or other. There are
East
several.
Tristram's Ave.
I'm sorry.
East Tristram's Avenue.
Avenue, that's the one. There were several one big beach easements that were granted along that, and I don't recall the circumstances whether, but I think Rick is right. They weren't necessarily to provide access from that property to the beach, but to give access to the beach from the nearby. Rick and Ed?
Yeah, so in those cases, as most one big beach easements are, they were a trade because the town was giving up the road which intersected the lots that usually ran from Eel Point to the beach. And that was part of the deal. We'll give you this, but we want one big beach and whatever else the deal was. Not unlike Nonantum's
Right.
one big beach, which all came as part of the negotiated settlement about beach access and which roads would be used and which wouldn't be. And the same thing in Baxter. I mean, it's clear there that the one big beach easements came as part of all those negotiations. So.
Correct. Right. So I think once we, oh, I'm sorry, Ed.
I think Rick is correct to an extent, but I think in Eel Point, there was some giving up of the layout of, East Tristram's Ave itself, and that was part of it in the yard sale kind of program. I think there was some swappage going on there. I'm not sure whether it was a yard sale or just part of the negotiations to do the one big beach. And there are some access points where Alliance Lane crosses the dunes there. There are some access points. The maintenance of the steps is privately maintained in the cases I'm thinking of, but because the town doesn't maintain the steps down in that pool in the wintertime.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, East Tristram's Ave actually came through the front of a lot of the properties that presumably were waterfront otherwise, and then on the other side was the town of Nantucket land, so to speak,
Exactly.
to the water.
Right. Bill?
Not to muddy the waters even more, but we also have a task of trying to identify the process people would use for the agreement that was struck at the end of James Street down in Hulbert Avenue to get through between those two properties there, and what that really entails. I remember there was a discussion about how it didn't include left and right, but it included to the beach and whatever. So how that's designated as a right of way down there, I'm still confused how that's going to be identified and how it works.
Right. Yeah. James Street is between the two houses. There's a driveway. There's a bulkhead, and during the winter there's a sand fence that's up there. I'm just trying to think, when we discussed this, it was it was sometime last year.
Yep.
The town did, as I recall,
Yeah,
the town did take the access. The question, as I vaguely remember, the question was, how do we mark it? Because it is right in the driveway. And again, my recollection is that we decided that there are other access points that are fairly near there. There's one at Dick Street. There's one at Johnson. There's a Johnson, then Wall Street, and
Charles Street one.
yeah, not, oh, well, Charles Street is of course one that's even before Dick Street. So rather than encouraging people to walk down the driveway to do that, we decided that we wouldn't. Of course, we haven't. Yeah, so anyway, we didn't mark that one. We did mark the other ones at Wall Street. Charles Street already had one. Dick Street already had one. Those are the concrete ones. And we had we put a flush one at Johnson Street, which somebody removed. We put a flush one at, oh God, at Wall Street, and then Willard Street is the other one down there. What we didn't decide was whether to mark them from the beach side. I think we decided that not to try and put signs on from the beach directing people to those. We figured that they'd probably know how they got on the beach or whatever. That's my recollection of those. Back to the original point, though, if if there is a list of one big beach easements, I think the thing to do would be to somehow include those on our map as saying, these are beaches that are publicly accessible. And that, of course, would include the public beaches, as well as the beaches that are owned by the Conservation Foundation, the Land Bank, and Mass Audubon owns a section of beach. And indicate those on the map. So at least people would know where the one big beach at, where the beach was accessible once they got onto the beach. Okay, so I guess that goes back to the original point of the map. The map having, developing a map that is accurate, that has the known public access points on it, and to see if there are any ones that we are missing, and see if there are any other potential ones that we can recommend to the select board to take. Lee, did you have a question?
A suggestion with Phil not on the call. After I get the minutes together, I'm going to ask Phil to look at it and to communicate with Nathan Porter about who does what and what issue, not what issues, what tasks need to be done so that we can make some progress. Now, if I recall, there is a beach map on the GIS website, but it only includes Nantucket public beaches. If anybody else recalls, help me out.
Lee, that's correct. But one of the things I had him do when we were working on Minnesota Beach project was to prepare a map that I believe that he has, that has the beaches that are owned by the town, owned by the various conservation organizations, owned by the land bank, and owned by the trustees, so that there is a sense of the extent of the amount of beach amount. And I think it was really an astounding number with respect to it. And so you might want to get in touch with him to see if he can pull that up and make that available to you and Phil.
Good.
Yeah, it is. It's pretty amazing how much of the beach really is accessible to the public.
I think it's over 50%, Alan. In terms of, I was shocked at the numbers.
Yeah, exactly. I know, and it depends on how much of CO2 you count too. So
right.
So. All right. I'm just trying to think if there's anything else I want to add to the map project. Nothing I can think of at this point. So I will speak with Phil when he gets back and have him check with Nathan and see, see which direction this map could take. I would think that Nathan can, well, anyway, I'll put it on next month's agenda as well. And in the meantime, I'll follow up with Phil, and I'll also try and get a hold of Jeff Carlson and Andrew Vorse again and see if they have any further input that we can do that. Okay, anything else on that item? Okay, next item is the plan for locating and installing the new public way monuments. Unfortunately, I haven't made any progress on that. Lee and I are going to get together and figure out where what I'm looking for is roads or ways to the beach that have been taken. For example, the ways on Hobart Avenue and Baxter Road and so on. And wait a minute, where am I going with this here? Oh, so as far as installing those monuments, we have, I believe we have 6 upright monuments that say public way on them. I think we have 2 that say public footpath on them. And we have a number of the flush monuments as well that to use. And so the question is, which of those access points that we know about are not marked yet, don't have a monument? And so anyway, that's the next step for that plan. So Lee and I will get together, review our notes and minutes and that sort of thing, and then take it from there. The next step, of course, where we ran out of steam, we put those monuments in pretty much by ourselves. We had help from who was Visco.
Dave Visco.
Yeah, Dave Visco. He contributed use of a bobcat or a trailer or whatever. So we got the monuments on the trail. Each one of those monuments weighs between 400 and 500 pounds. So it's not something, you can just sort of lift and put in the back of a pickup truck and get to the site. So that's where we broke down. We ran out of how to get those in the ground. When I talked with Rob McNeil before he left, he was agreeable to getting those monuments and facilitating that. I haven't raised that with Steve Arsenault yet, but I will do that once we have the next list of the public ways that we want to mark. So that's where we are on that item. Lee, do you have anything to add to that?
No, except for if you read the history of Stonehenge, how did the little people get those monuments upright? It's actually the same way we did. We dug the hole.
Right.
Dave pushed the trailer right to the edge of the hole, and we shoved the monument over the hole. And as it plunged into the hole, it came close to upright. And then it was Frank Holgate and Joe Marklinger. One of them had a great big level. And so we propped the monument up as nearly level as we could and then refilled the hole. There was a lot of hand labor in there, but you're right. It was Dave getting the stones close to where they belong. That helped us out. I think Steve's crew will simply put a chain around them and lift them and then drop them in place.
Could be. So anyway, that's on my Stephen list to go through that. Stephen is also the administrator for the Cemetery Commission. So I've been meeting with Stephen on a pretty regular basis about some issues to clarify some issues that we had with the Cemetery Commission. So I'll follow up once we have the list of where these monuments are going. I'll coordinate with Lee and we'll get together and then make that arrangement. I like to get those in the ground. So all those wonderful monuments, by the way, were donated to us by Neil Patterson. So anyway, I definitely want to get those last ones in the ground. Okay, anything else on that issue about the monuments? Okay, that brings us to old, new, other business. Anyone have any old business, any new business, anything we should know about? Ed, do you have anything? You usually have some pretty good ideas.
I was pondering some things. I mean, is there any progress going on over there on Vestal as we were talking about that time, or Wind Street, actually, excuse me? remember the Wynn Street kind of link? Was there something going on with that we needed to keep abreast of?
Right. We had recommended
The Snell
taking,
property.
we had recommended taking of that property. That was some years ago. And then with the Snell property up there being, I'm not, I think what they're doing is dividing it or something. The family is working on that.
I think they're taking like only several lots out of it, to be honest,
Yeah.
and I'm not sure to reserve, but I was thinking that's going to be a logical bike path perhaps someday, or some access to Wynn Street and across to Matticat Road and the connector. So I was wondering if we are kind of in contact, like the Pleasant Street property, with anyone on it, I guess.
The answer, yes. When Rob McNeil was here, I had filled Rob in on the work that we had done as far as the taking of Wynn Street, the proposal to put not just the road, but to put a bike path through there. And the whole idea was we're trying to connect the Surfside bike path with the my Comet bike path and the Matticat bike path, to have a connection, so you didn't have to go out on that stretch of Prospect Street by the cemetery and so on. So that is still very much under consideration. And before Carol left, she suggested that they were going to put a sewer line, or they were going to put some sort of infrastructure in Wynn Street. And at that point, the town would do whatever was necessary as far as taking the private part of it, which is the paved part. By the way, the dirt part is public. It's the paved part that is private, and put whatever the infrastructure was, whether it's a sewer line or something under there. So anyway, it is on the list of connections that we want to make.
Alan, just very simply, since you're meeting with Steve Arsenault, just add this as something to keep him informed, because DPW recommendation to the select board on the need to take is a very powerful ally to what we want to do.
Correct. Absolutely. Okay. Yes, I will add that to my Steve Arsenault list of things. By the way, Steve has been very cooperative with anytime that I had a question or an issue or whatever. He's been very responsive, so that's a good sign. Yes, Ed.
Alan, through you, if I may, to Bill. I mean, on the Matticat end of the island, what's going on exactly with the progress on the obstructions and this and that? Do you know what's happening out there? I haven't actually been out to look at it recently.
When the encroachment was in fact identified.
Yeah.
And as soon as the perpetrators lawyered up, the town has backed away from anything.
Oh, okay.
So as a result, there has not been a change.
Okay, this is on what area, Bill?
All of Washington Ave.
Oh, yes, right.
So in effect, well, down the road, it probably will come back to haunt us in that, it's acknowledged encroachment that's being allowed to continue that I can't imagine at some point won't be brought back up in another case.
Right. Yeah, there are a number of encroachments along that way. I remember, was it last year that Steve Cohen had put a warrant article to take that, or at least a portion of Washington Street.
There was a yard sale he wanted to do, yeah, between
Right. So I went and walked as much of Washington Street as I could. And it's amazing to think that there's this, I think it's 50 feet wide, this big strip of land there. It does abut some land bank properties as well, and that's another thing there. So yeah, I haven't heard anything else whether Steve was going to bring that back as far as taking that portion of Washington Street or not.
No, that's sort of like gone away.
Yeah,
Not
that's
that it
what I-
couldn't, not that it couldn't come back. I don't say the instigator, but one of the reasons for doing so, that property that eliminated their access to Matticat Road and was coming out the back way
Right.
by choice. That property has since flipped and the people have opened back out to Matticat Road, so.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The other thing, I mean, there's so much side stuff on that whole thing, when we're talking about the coastal erosion stuff and the reports that have been done and the possible need to reallocate roads. Sort of like Baxter Road all over again, or the potential for. And so, the thought might very well be, why would we give up additional town abilities to be very short-sighted? So I think there'll be more discussion on that as it goes forward.
Gotcha.
This is the coastal resilience you were talking about, Bill, right? In case Tennessee Ave disappeared and you need another access along there, is that what you're?
All right, yeah.
Got you.
And the whole, there's the whole thing where the town at some point is thinking of shoving a sewer district out that way. And, it doesn't make sense to spend $50 million to an area that by all accounts is not going to be there for an extended period of time, when your other areas within the town footprint that's been identified for needing sewer, does it not make sense to go do those areas instead? So doesn't mean that we won't go ahead and spend it, but
Yeah.
such is life.
You never know. I think in probably 10 or 20 years that Tennessee Ave will be beachfront, or
Exactly.
the beach will be the beach itself. Okay, is there anything else to come before the committee this afternoon? Seeing none, I declare we are at the end of our agenda and that the meeting is adjourned.
Thank you all. I will close the recording and Alan, for the record, it's 4:54 p.m.
Great.
Bye-bye all.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
See you next month.